Welcome to Advice from Your Advocates. I'm Bob Manner. I'm a certified elder law attorney in Michigan. And this is a show about seniors and about the long-term care industry and financial issues seniors deal with and all things related to those that are retired and possibly looking at long-term care in their future. So today we are privileged to have my friend, Wendy Jones. I've known Wendy for a very long time. She's the founder of Next Steps for Seniors and the founder of Next Steps for Seniors Foundation, which is a fantastic organization. One of the things I know about Wendy is she just has that heart and passion for seniors. And I've used her services and had my clients use her services for many years. So Wendy, welcome. And why don't you introduce yourself for a second here?
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here today. And not to put a number on it, but we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which means, Bob, we've known each other for 10 years because
That's
I
right.
believe I met you right when I was starting my business. So that's how long we've been collaborating and referring back and forth to each other. So it's kind of exciting. So Next Steps for Seniors, I'm the CEO and founder. And like I just mentioned, we started 10 years ago. And the goal really is to educate families and share information about the next steps, so to speak. So many things happen in life. And I just have this passion for wanting to get to people before things happen, because as we age, and everybody knows it, as we age, your knees start hurting, you get diabetes, something starts happening. And before you know it, in fact, I believe the percentage is 70% of people in their lifetime are going to need some kind of care. And so that's why I started Next Steps for Seniors. So my company actually, I have a wonderful team that just walks alongside families to really help them through the process of, is it time to get someone in the house to help my family? Is it time to move maybe to a safer environment? Those are the things we're helping you with. So it's exciting. We love what we do. And I have just a great team helping us. We cover Southeast Michigan, and our services are actually free of charge because it's kind of like real estate. So it's real estate for seniors, really, is what it is. Instead of finding a house, we're finding you an assisted living or an independent living, or, it could be memory care, whatever their needs are at that time.
Yeah, and that's great. And it is, it's a really important point that we think about. I'm often sort of being the gloomy Gus, and I'm not very optimistic, but I have to be sort of that gloomy Gus, as my job is to think about bad things that could happen and help prepare people for that. And so ideally, folks think about different stages of their life and they prepare in advance for that. And I think for so long, folks they prepare for, graduating from high school and getting a job or going to college. They prepare for marriage, they prepare for kids, they certainly prepare for retirement. And then they get to this stage in life where they think that everything's just going to stay the same after that. And you said 70%, I think it's a pretty accurate figure, that the vast majority of us are going to have a change in our life and where we're going to actually need some help. And nobody likes to talk about that.
They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, nobody. And so I get up a lot of, I do a lot of classes and presentations, and I'll get up in front of a group and I'll say, all right, I'm going to depress you right from the very beginning, which is that most of us are going to need some help. And especially, the older generations, we think about the World War II generation, which I know is kind of winnowing down, but they're known for being self-sufficient, and also the baby boomers and things like that being self-sufficient. It's very hard to accept the idea that you might need help sometime, but if you don't accept that or prepare for it, maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of the lucky ones that dies peacefully in your sleep at age 100 without any serious illness, but most of us are going to need that, and preparing in advance is a very important element. So what do you recommend to folks as far as kind of thinking ahead and being proactive regarding this?
So, one of the most important things, I think, is obviously getting your documents in order. And that's what you do a great job at. I think it's really important to have a good elder law attorney. I cannot even tell you how many times I get phone calls and I ask them who the power of attorney is, and they don't have one.
Mhm,
And I'm just
right.
like, okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. But it's important because who's going to be making these decisions? I definitely feel like visiting your loved ones as much as possible is really critical, and not just stopping in. We are all busy. Everybody's got a full schedule, and we're in the habit of stopping in. Oh, hey, mom, how you doing? Mom sitting at the kitchen table appears to be fine. And you never see her get up. You never see her go up the stairs. You never see her cook. You never see her, right? Do all the things that she's got to do every day. You just see her sitting at the kitchen table. So I would say the number one thing that I would love families to do is spend a considerable amount of time watching your loved ones. And if they're still driving, how about driving with them in the car? And if you don't feel safe, then they sure as heck should not be on the road, because other people probably are not safe with them driving.
That's a really good point, Wendy. We noticed for years now that we have a large uptick in phone calls right after Thanksgiving and Christmas, because that's when we tend to spend a lot of time with our elderly relatives. And so then all of a sudden we're realizing, oh, well, this is a little different than what we were expecting. And then we'll start getting some phone calls saying, well, mom seems like she's having some memory loss. Dad seems like he's having some trouble getting around. What do we do next? And so that's an excellent point as far as doing that more often so that you can get in front of it before crisis happens.
Right. Absolutely. And the last thing we want is, mom or dad to get in an accident, cause an accident, right, while they're driving,
All right.
end up in the hospital. And then this is where the funnel starts. And if we can avoid it, we want to keep your loved one safe.
Wendy, you've heard me say this lots of times about you need to accept help before you think you need it. And that's a hard thing
Right.
for me to do. I get it. But the reality is, if you start, and I think this is what you're saying, if you start kind of taking a look at your options out there, it's not nearly as scary as people think it is.
Not.
So some people have this in their head, and I complained about it as a cultural event, that there's these movies and all these things that tell us if we leave our home, it's going to be the worst thing in the world. And the reality is, in my experience, and I've worked with hundreds of families that moved, have that transition from home, maybe get some care in their home at first, but then move on to an independent living or assisted living or other level of care. And the vast majority of time, the parents are objectively happier. They have people to talk to, they have activities, they have entertainers come by, they have good food on a regular basis, they can get out to the casino or get out to wherever the trips are. And it's a much better quality of life than being lonely in your house all the time. Now, I'm not saying house is not a good option too, but often we put it off so long until it's an absolute crisis. And the idea of getting the experience of it, realizing that it's really nice places out there that provide good food and have good options, that so that you don't kind of get yourself in that mindset that if you have to leave your home, that it's this awful prison or something like that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the big thing is socialization. A lot of our seniors are very lonely. And, especially after going through COVID, where we've had so much isolation and they're alone in their houses and they're not even seeing their family sometimes. So I think we turned the corner here, and so many people just want people around them. Right. And these communities do a phenomenal job of keeping people engaged, keeping them active. Your mind is sharper when you have things going on around you. You're not lonely sitting on the couch watching TV day in and day out. And you begin to wonder, why am I even getting up and getting dressed when I'm just staying at home watching TV all day and then getting dressed, for bed and going back to bed. But when you're out there, and I've moved so many families, Bob, that are just so happy and so thrilled. The food is amazing. They meet new people. They're having conversations. They're playing checkers and different games. Wii bowling is a big one. But This is a fun time. I mean, you can enjoy yourself in your later years. You don't need to be lonely and bored.
I have noticed that about COVID, that a few different things. First of all, I've always noticed, as people made the decisions and families made the decisions to move into a community, a care community, that frequently someone that had memory issues that were seemed to be consistently getting worse started to get a little bit better, only because of that socialization that you mentioned.
Right.
But I've noticed recently the opposite of the folks that never left their home during COVID. And I realize that a lot of us are kind of looking at COVID as sort of in the rearview mirror, but it's not completely. And I have lots of clients that still rarely leave their house. They rely on family or deliveries for their groceries, and they rarely leave their house except for maybe a doctor's appointment or things like that. And I've noticed with those folks that they really are cognitively getting worse, because you can't maintain your cognitive abilities if you don't have human interaction. And maybe you have your kids come by a little bit and they're maybe even there an hour a day or something like that, or maybe it's husband and wife and they interact with each other. But I've noticed that people that were kind of locked down, so to speak, that their cognitive abilities and their memory has definitely slipped over the time, and more so than what I've seen in other periods of time that didn't have that same level of isolation.
Yeah, I agree. It's sad.
One of the things, Wendy, that I've talked about is, that I help folks that go into real nursing homes. And we're going to talk about sort of the distinction between a nursing home and the places that you're talking about, which are not nursing homes.
Right.
But one of the things I'll often, when I do one of my classes, I'll have, I kind of teasingly say, okay, who wants to live the rest of their life in a nursing home, meaning full nursing
And
home?
everyone's
Nobody
jumping
raises
up
it.
and down,
Yeah,
right?
nobody's getting really excited about that. And I say, okay, then I have some instructions for you, because I can tell you, most of my clients that end up in nursing homes, it's because they refuse to accept help before they thought they needed it. We're all kind of self-sufficient. Oh, I'm fine. I don't need any help, and they refuse to accept help before they thought they needed it. And then the crisis happens. We have a broken hip. We have a fall down the stairs. We have, something like that. And then it leads to the next thing. They go to the hospital and they catch whatever infection's going around there. And then the memory issues they were experiencing get worse because of all of the upheaval and, going to the hospital and all of the confusion there. And it just kind of takes the spiral downward until they need full skilled nursing home for the rest of their life, that maybe could have been avoided had they got in front of it and
Right.
had they considered other options before they thought it was necessary. Too often, I think we only are reactive instead of proactive. So
Right.
walk us through some of the options that people have as far as considering care options when they're just starting to think, okay, there's a little bit of memory issues here, or maybe there's some mobility issues not getting around and I'm worried about falling. What options do you have for folks?
So I want to start with, if they just need some support services. Okay. So if they're pretty much doing okay, but you're noticing some things and you're maybe a little concerned, I want seniors, and we all do want them to remain as independent as possible for as long as possible. And if you start by putting a few support services around a senior, it's shocking how much longer they'll go. So some of those ideas would be Guardian Medical Alert, I've fallen and I can't get up button. And they have them so that they actually, when you fall, it triggers immediately. You don't need to push the button. And that's what I recommend. Some of the other things are cameras. We have so much technology nowadays. If you are concerned about your loved one getting up in the middle of the night and falling and you not knowing, why not put a camera there and you'll know? That's another option. Some of the driving, they shouldn't be driving at night. Have an Uber pick them up, or you go pick them up at nighttime. So these are things that we can all be doing, right? Meals on Wheels is a great program. So start with some of those programs to just put some support around them. So they're not, driving to the grocery store if they're not supposed to be driving. Then obviously, once you've kind of maximized that, there is home care. Private duty home care, where someone comes into the home and we can help you find, we vet all of our companies that we work with. And we can help you find the right organization to come into the house, even if it's 4 hours every day, whatever it might be that they need, just to put some support again around them. Now, when do you know that it's time to move outside of the home? And usually that is when let me just say this, if you're hearing from your loved one daily and you're concerned about them eating, if they have bad hygiene, they're
Mm,
forgetting their medications. All of these are indications that they probably need more support and they should be in a community. Because if you move into an independent living, it's like living in your own apartment, right? So you've got bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. It is your own place, but there's someone right outside the door that can help you if something happens. And that's what I like about an independent living community. So, and they're reasonable. They're not, $6,000-7,000 like the assisted livings are. So independent living, I really think of for somebody who just needs a little support, wants to go down to the dining room and have some meals, maybe need some medication reminders where they're bringing in the medication every day and reminding them to take it. Because I will tell you, some of the biggest issues that happen is you forget the medication and you end up in the hospital, or you fall and you end up in the hospital. So this is what we're trying to avoid, right? By putting support around you so that those things don't happen. Moving into some of the other options, assisted living would be after independent is like kind of the next level, so to speak. And assisted living, what I like to tell people about assisted living is if you don't think your loved one can stay in a room or in an apartment by themselves without somebody checking on them regularly, then they need assisted living.
yeah.
So every 2 hours, they come in and check on you in assisted living. And they're like, "Hi, Mr. Smith, are you okay? How is everything?" And they check on you all night long too, because if you get out of the bed, then you fall, then they know within 2 hours. Now, that's not ideal, but it's better than laying there all night long. So these are the things assisted living is good with. Also, if you have trouble getting to the bathroom, which is a really big thing, I think that's the delineator between independent and assisted, because if you are not cognitive enough to know when you have to go to the bathroom and to get there, usually you might want to consider a little more care, like an assisted living place. So, and then the third level really is if you've got, any kind of Alzheimer's, dementia, you don't know where you are, what day it is, this type of things, which is so sad, but is really on the rise right now. It's just breaks my heart. That is when you would need a secured environment. And when we say secured, you cannot get in or out of that community, right? You can walk around the community, you can come in and out of your room, but you cannot leave, because a lot of time memory care, when they say, "I want to go home," they're thinking home when they were like 12, not
Right.
home like 10 years ago. And then they're trying to go back to wherever they were raised, and it's dangerous.
Wendy, it's interesting about the want to go home, because you and I both know that that's a very, very common thing for folks with memory issues and dementia to say, is they want to go home. And I tend to believe that home is some place that doesn't exist anymore. And that's not, like, I even had a family that still had the family home from when they were a child. And they took her back there, and she said, "I want to go home." And I almost think it's almost like a spiritual thing, that they want to
Ready.
go home, meaning they
Home.
want a place of safety, a place where they feel comfortable, and that place doesn't exist because of the way their brain waves are working now.
Mm,
And so I feel like that's going to be no matter where you are. And this is so sad, because so many, especially if it's a spouse or a mom or a dad, and they say, "Oh, but I dropped her off and I stayed there with her for a little bit, but she just kept begging me to go home." And I said, "But didn't she do that when she was home?" And but the guilt that families have or spouses have, and even though that she's saying the same thing that she said when she was home, that
right.
they're looking at it as, "Oh my gosh, I feel so bad because she's just begging me to go home." And what I try to explain is that there is not such a place that's going to
Right.
satisfy that need, at least in this realm. So
In this life. Right.
it's just really interesting. I'm going to add one thing to that, and that's if the person is frequently going to the hospital because of dehydration or a urinary tract infection, that might be a time where we have to look at a different level of care also. Because I
Right.
see this frequently, even with home care, that the person's not hydrating enough, and that we can kind of work on that if we're in a different, more protective setting.
Right, exactly. And I do feel like, the activities and all the action and just even if you're sitting and watching other people, it's better than being alone. It's
Yeah.
better than being alone. So just putting all that care support around you. As far as the pricing goes, and this is something that I think is really important, Bob, because a lot of people assume everything's covered by insurance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, Medicare pays for everything. I've been paying into that my whole life. I don't need to worry about the cost. That's not the case. Medicare is only for your hospital stay, your physician visits. It does not cover an actual stay in an assisted living. And I think that's important for people to know.
That is important. And so I know we're going to talk about this in a minute here about the foundation that you set up, which is amazing and incredible to help people that are otherwise might not be able to get the services and the assisted independent living type setting. And it's amazing what you've done. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But in addition to that, there are programs that can help pay for this, like the Veterans Administration. If the person or their spouse was ever served in the military, we certainly want to look at whether or not the VA could help pay for it. And then there are some Medicaid options that work in some settings, not in every setting, but in some settings that are independent living in particular, but sometimes in assisted or memory care. But usually independent living is a lot easier to work with the Medicaid programs. But there's always worth looking into that to say, sometimes people look at what my role is as trying to save money for the kids. Well, that's sort of a nice side effect sometimes, but the reality is we're trying to make sure that the person has the leverage to leverage what money they have, what assets they have, so that they can live in the best environment, the best quality of life that they can have for their remaining years and not run out of money and have that financial crisis. So,
Right.
finances is a big part of it, but I also encourage everybody not to make decisions without getting all of the relevant options out there. So sometimes we just assume, oh, well, we can't afford that, or we don't want to spend that kind of money. Well, come in, let's look at some options that you might have. I especially notice this between husband and wife.
Right.
And maybe you'll see this where it's a situation where one spouse really probably should be in a care setting where the other spouse is still okay being at home.
Mhm.
And often in that situation, in my experience, finances is a big part of it because they're worried if I spend all this money on my husband or my wife, am I going to have enough money to support myself for the rest of my years? And that's where really come in to see us. There are likely going to be some options available to take the money part of it out of it. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors that go into it, but particularly when somebody has severe dementia or Alzheimer's or Lewy body or Parkinson's, any of those where the spouse isn't capable of managing and taking care of their spouse anymore and still continues to do it to everybody's detriment because they're worried about money, then let's look at other options. So talk to me a little bit about spouses, because that's one of the difficulties I have is what if we have people that need different levels of care, or what if we really want to make sure this couple's been together for 60 years that we don't want to separate them and put them in different places? How would you handle something like that?
I'm glad you asked that because honestly, when it comes to husband and wives and they have a special relationship and they want to be with each other, we do everything we can to keep them together. I feel like that is probably the number one heartbreak for seniors is when they can't be with their spouse. And, a lot of times these people have been married 60, 70 years. I'm only at 29 years and I would probably still be devastated, but maybe not as much as someone who has got 20 more years on me.
Yeah.
So I do feel like anything we can do. So these are some options. We have moved people into an independent living community where the husband might live in the independent living and then the wife lives in the assisted living because it's a continuum of care. And then they can get together. The husband's allowed to go see the wife whenever he wants. And then if they want to eat together, they can eat together in the assisted living. If they want to eat in the independent, he needs to bring her over and be responsible for her until he brings her back to the assisted. So that's one option, is getting a continuum of care. I have had families move in together in a 2-bedroom assisted living community where the husband and wife have enough space. And, in these communities, there's, 80 some people. So there's bound to be someone that he can play checkers with and have fun with, regardless of, if he's in a wheelchair or not. Who cares if he can have a conversation? So it's been, that's my goal. I've even actually, Bob, moved someone into an AFC, which is an adult foster care community. And they gave them the wing. The whole side of the house was for this husband and wife. So they each had their own room. They had their own bathroom. So they pretty much have their own home. And then over on this side is where the other people lived and the caregiver. So, and then the caregiver would, help them when they needed help. So there are many options for couples. I'll be honest. I think it's important to try do everything you can to keep them together. And if you can't, to keep them as close in proximity to each other so they can see each other. It just breaks my heart to be married that long and to lose your soulmate and not be able to see them knowing they're alive. That's the worst. It's bad enough when they pass and they're in heaven, but my gosh, if they're alive and you can't see them. So my whole team works very, very hard to keep them as close as we can together.
Yeah, very, very nice. And so let's kind of talk a little bit more directly for anybody that has been listening. They probably get an idea of what it is that you do for families, but let's be very specific. When would somebody call Next Steps for Seniors? What does that process look like? How do we get from there to the solution that they need? Let's walk us through what Next Steps for Seniors does for folks.
Okay, sounds good, Bob. So usually a family will call us when something's happened and they've noticed a change in their loved one. Maybe they're in the hospital because they fell. Maybe they're in rehab and their stay is running out. Maybe they've lost their keys and they're not allowed to drive anymore and they're concerned. Anything like that that's happened within your loved one's lives. Maybe a spouse has passed away and now they're home alone. That's when I would definitely reach out to us, because we can help walk through the steps of being a little proactive, like we talked about earlier in the series, in what some of the support we can put around them. So when someone calls our office, our business model is we are located in Rochester Hills, Michigan, our physical office, and you can come here anytime and talk to anybody. But really, we cover Southeast Michigan as far as placement and care and that type of thing. So if you call our office, and you can do that 24/7, we have a service that picks up the phone. You always will have a live person. Nice. We do an intake process, and we get some basic information from you. We do want you to know approximately what the financial situation is of your loved one. Many people don't even know how much their mom and dad get for Social Security or for pension. So those are good numbers to have an idea of what the income is coming in monthly, just to start. But definitely we do that intake sheet, and then we assign each family to a personal placement specialist. So I actually have 13 placement specialists on my team that are phenomenal. We have social workers, we have nurses, many people that have been in the industry and very familiar with working with seniors. And what we do is that placement specialist will work very closely with the family and the senior and go on the tours with them. We'll do an additional extension of more information, maybe what their hobbies are, if they play cards. We know these places, and there's over 500, to be quite honest, Bob, just in Southeast Michigan. So if your mom plays euchre every night, you can tell us that, and we know which places play euchre every night. Like this is the kind of, so you're not just trying to figure this out on your own. We have been in every single community that we have ever moved anyone into, and very few organizations can say that. I wouldn't move someone in there if I would not if I have not seen it and I have not interviewed the people and I do not know how and what they do in that building. So it's really critical to call someone who understands that information. So that placement specialist will work with the family. They'll answer questions. You'll have their personal cell phone number. You can ask them anything to do with this, the whole process. If you have a question about doctors or Medicare or veterans benefits, I mean, we just have a resource, right, for all of that, and for transportation. And they go on the tours with them. They look at the different options. If they decide on a specific assisted living, they walk through that process with that assisted living. They're always an advocate on your behalf, right? Because the salespeople at these assisted livings, they just want to sell you on their place.
Right.
We want what's best for the senior. So we want to make sure that you understand all the things that each place offers. And this is just an example. Some people say, we have a nurse available. If they say that, that may not mean that they're on staff in the building. That just means they're available by the phone. So these are things that you don't know, right? But we do. So we would then say, you know, are they working Monday through Friday? Are they there at nighttime? You know, that type of stuff. So then after the tour, once you decide, we actually visit your senior in that community, your loved one, bring them a gift, and we're constantly following up to make sure things are going smoothly. I think follow-up is a really important part. We don't want to just move someone in and never talk to them again, or the family. So it's really important for us to continue the relationship. And many times, you know, they call us in a year or two later and say, okay, I'm ready for the next step at this point, right?
Yeah.
So there's constant follow-up. We do send a nice little thank you card in the mail. We do a survey. So our goal is to make sure that you're satisfied. And honestly, your referral is the best referral we could ever get. Any family members, that is the number one place we actually get our referrals, is from people that we've previously placed.
Other families that you've helped. Wendy, I know this is a fantastic service and a very needed service that you offer. It sounds like it would be expensive.
Oh, great segue, Bob. I know you for that one. So our services, are you ready for this one? Free of charge. No charge for our services. And you're wondering, well, how in the world does this company make money? So what we do is, it's similar to real estate. So we assign a placement specialist to you. That placement specialist does all this work on your behalf, but the community that you choose actually gives us a referral fee, and that's how we get paid. So there is no charge for the family. And I think that's very important, because the family is overwhelmed, stressed, and you don't want it to have to feel like the clock is always ticking when you have a conversation with us. So we do it that way for a reason, because we love our seniors and we want to make sure that they're taken care of.
And that is great that it doesn't cost anything. And to be clear, there's no hidden fees either. It's not that they're going to pay more to the facility. They're going to pay the same amount to the facility. But like you say, there's 500 facilities out there and they all have to fill their spots. And they're more than willing to provide this real estate analogy there. I like that. That's a very good analogy.
Real estate for seniors.
Yeah.
And so much more. I mean, so much more, Bob. We really, my team is amazing. They go the extra mile all the time. And we are constantly, I mean, there's times that we're actually taking the senior around because the family can't get off of work. I mean, there's so much that my team does. They're just amazing. They really are.
I agree. You have a fantastic team. And I do frequently recommend you, because sometimes the family says, oh, I think we can do it ourselves. And my point is, why would you want to? First of all, you're not going to have the resources and background information that Next Steps for Seniors is going to have. And it's a whole lot of work to narrow it down. And what's probably going to happen if they don't work with you or somebody that has that same level of expertise, then what's probably going to happen is that they're going to look at 2 or 3 places. And then, you know, nothing against the marketers at the different facilities, but it's going to be partly, you know, based on the presentation that they give versus what, you know, real knowledge of what the place is like and what they offer and things like that. So I see there's really no downside to working with Next Steps in that regard.
Thank you. Well, and I do want that, you bring up a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Bob, because the representative at that community, you might absolutely 100% adore this person, which is awesome. But what you need to understand is they have one job, and that is to talk to those people to get them to move in. But after you move in, that person sometimes is not the same go-to person when you have a problem in the community.
It would
So
not
it's-
most often be the same person, right?
So you just
Yeah.
really want to meet the nurses, you want to meet the care staff when you're in a community. Don't just meet the sweet salesperson, who they all do an amazing job, but you really want to ask those questions about the team that's actually caring for your loved one.
So I want to caution everyone about this, though, because there's a lot of organizations out there, even commercials on the radio and on TV. And I want to caution you about putting your information or your mother's information or even your contact information, the telling about that you need, placement for your mother or your father. Don't put that on the internet. Most folks don't even really fully understand what they're doing. They're saying, okay, I looked at this place, it's down the street. I went to the Google and it said that if I put my information in there about my mom and my contact information, that they'll get me information about this place down the street. That, for people our age and younger, we don't want to talk to anybody. We want to do everything over the internet and never have to talk to anybody. But there's a real problem with that, because what's happening is then they're going to gather that information. There's companies out there that do this. And a lot of them advertise on TV, A Place for Mom. There's a number of other places out there where they might gather your information and then send your information out to all of the local independent livings, assisted livings, and things like that. And now potentially you have 20 different marketers calling you and bugging you. And that's not really helpful for you, because they're not giving you any unique information or to taking that hands-on approach of one-on-one service. They're just sending your information out through the internet to all these places, and then they're probably going to get paid whether they've helped you or not. And you're going to get bugged by all these phone calls I've had so many clients that have fallen for this, and they were just innocently putting their information on a website thinking that they were going to get information from one source, and that information then got spread out among many different care centers or residences, and then they just were deluged with phone calls from all these different marketers. Have you heard of that, Wendy? Because that's the experience my clients have had sometimes.
I'll be honest, Bob, I have had clients call us repeatedly in tears, crying, because if one more person calls them to tell them something about their community, they're just going to break down. And this is not a time in your life that you're okay getting a zillion phone calls. This is a time where you want a trusted resource that is really going to help you. And we end up helping all these people regardless of whether we're getting paid or not. I'll be quite honest, because I feel so bad that they got stuck in the system. And there's a lot of online companies out there, but that's what I love about Next Steps for Seniors is we are hands-on, we're boots on the ground, we're right there with you. You can come sit in our conference room and have a conversation with a placement specialist. We've got nurses on staff. If you have medical questions, we really feel confident in the information we're sharing with you.
That's really important. I want to put a fine point on that, Wendy. What Wendy's saying is that if you've already submitted your information to one of these online things, thinking very innocently you were just asking for information from one source, you might have gotten connected and put your information into one of these databases that got then sent out to others. Now Next Steps won't get paid potentially. And that company that really never did anything for you and actually kind of made your life harder might get a commission from that, even though they didn't do the hands-on service like you're talking about. So just be very careful when these types of things come up. And it's so much better to rely on somebody that rely on referrals from other professionals, because if you get into that loop, then what Wendy's saying, that her company will sometimes still be able to help you, even though they're not going to get paid, and the wrong company is going to get paid, even though they didn't do the work. And so just be very careful when you're going online and putting information. I think lots of folks know that, but we're so used to that. We want to get a pizza, we put our information in.
Everything's fast.
If you want residence, you want to figure out your parents' place of living and where they're going to get the best care. That's just, please avoid that.
It's a whole different level. Yes, I totally agree. And we
wanna
love our
talk-
sweet seniors. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Bob.
didn't mean to interrupt, Wendy. So I want to talk about something that I know is near and dear to your heart, and I think is just an amazing thing that you've done. So you've set up the Next Steps for Seniors Foundation, and it's frankly incredible what you've done with it. And just go ahead and tell us how it works and what caused you to put so much time and effort into building it.
Well, I'll tell you the reason that we started it, and it was only 5 years ago, but because when we started the company 10 years ago, it did not take long for me to realize that the phone calls that were coming in, a lot of these needs were higher and the amount of money they had was lower. And just so everyone knows, the average price of an assisted living is around $4,500 a month. And if your loved one doesn't have $4,500 a month, and this is the phone call I would get, they'd be like, well, what do I do now? And there really is not that much to do. If you don't qualify for Medicaid, which of course we spend, a Medicaid is an amazing program. But financially, sometimes there is, and physically, they might not be ready, right, for a nursing home. So more so that financially and physically than anything else. So there is a gap between the people that qualify for Medicaid and the people that can afford assisted living. And this gap, which they're now calling the forgotten middle, okay, there's a term for it. That's the gap that we're helping with the foundation. So we support financially, assist physically, and share spiritually. So our mission bridges that financial gap for low-income seniors that are in need of proper housing and care. And we do it as a faith-based organization because we want our vulnerable seniors to live out their years with dignity and grace, just like you and I would want to do. And I love what we're doing with the foundation. We have impacted hundreds of people in all three of those pillars, financially, physically, and spiritually. And it has truly made a difference in many people's lives. So I am grateful for my team. I have one employee, Cheryl Clark, who is amazing. She is the executive director. And then myself, obviously, I work tirelessly for the foundation, obviously not charging the foundation anything because I want it to succeed. Bob, I love what we do. And honestly, I really don't know what some of these people would do if we were not there for them.
Yeah, I agree entirely. There is definitely that middle section that is not ready for Medicaid, and we don't have the resources, and it's such a difficult situation. And so you're solving something that throughout the country
Really
is a problem, and you found you're doing great work towards that. And in that regard, you've been able to get donations from different hospitals and facilities and individuals. If you're somebody that's listening to this podcast and your heart tells you that you want to support this mission, think about it this way. You might be in a position where you are not you're not likely to be in that situation where you simply have no resources to be able to provide for your safety and needs, and you have maybe the person that needs it has dementia or physical limitations or things like that, but you're in a position where you have some resources and you'll probably never be in that position, especially if you plan ahead and we make sure that we protected your assets and things like that you'll likely never be in that position. But if it moves your heart to say, but for the grace of God, that, I could be there and you'd like to support this mission, how, Wendy, might they be able to support it? Is there a website or a phone number where they would be able to contribute to this cause?
Yes, I would like to give you both of those because we do not receive any funding from the state or local government, nothing. We rely solely on individual donors. So yes, the phone number is 248-651-5010. And our website is also a great way to make a donation. You can also see all the great things that we've done to help people and to support people. And we do programs. And that website is Next Steps, 4, seniorsfoundation.org. I know it's super long. I'm sorry, but that's all we got. So Next Steps, 4, Foundation, all one word.org. And you can see the events we have coming up. You can see, people we've helped, testimonies, and you can donate. So thank you, Bob, for that opportunity, because I am trying to get that out as much as I can. And anyone who has a loved one that they've gone through this situation and they have the funds, the first thing they think of is, what do people do that don't have the funds? And there really is nothing else out there. There's some very minimal programs for low income, but this is, like I said, that middle forgotten is a huge piece of this puzzle. And with our baby boomers getting older, honestly, this number is going to grow substantially, the middle forgotten, probably in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for educating us on these things and having this conversation. So for those that might need your regular services, what's the best way to get a hold of you or initiate a process to start using Next Steps for Seniors?
Okay, yes, definitely. Our phone is the same number as the foundation. We're in the same office. We just have just a system that separates those out, but it is 248-651-5010. And the website is nextsteps4seniors.com. And we would love to hear from you. Even if you have questions about maybe your current situation, definitely call us. And also we have a radio program on the weekends if you want to tune into that as well. It's an opportunity to learn more. Bob Manor is going to be on it soon. So
no, that's a great radio program. You have such great guests, and it's been going on for how many years have you been doing that radio program?
7 years, I want to say. It's on Saturdays at 11 now, WDTK.
Saturdays at 11 WDTK, and it's a great program. So if you're in the southeastern Michigan area on Saturday morning, you might want to tune into it. It's always very interesting. So thanks, Wendy. I want to remind everybody that we do have the dates for next year's Elder Law and Advocacy Boot Camp. So we do have the website up. So if you want to be thinking ahead to get your continuing education credits or just attend, this is primarily for social workers, nursing home administrators, or other people that work within the long-term care industry. It's the Elder Law and Advocacy Boot Camp, and it is scheduled for Friday, April 21st. We've got a great slate of speakers, and we're excited to have it. So thanks again, and we'll see you at the next Advice from Your Advocates.